Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too. Welcome into this week's episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Today we have Don LaTorre on with us. Don is a coach. He coaches parents, primarily dads. I've gotten to know Don very recently over the past few weeks. We had a good chat here about a week or so ago and invited him on the podcast. I think he has a lot of knowledge and expertise that he can share with us. And so I'm going to let Don introduce himself and then we'll get started.
Cool. Yeah, Anthony, it's good to talk to you again, man. Thanks for having me on. So Don LaTorre, married for about 10 years, have 3 kids, all girls, so 7, 3, and 1. We live just outside of Houston. I moved tons of places in my life, but Houston, Texas has been home for the last about 5 years. I'm very thankful to be settled somewhere. So.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Yeah, Don and I are living very parallel lives right now. I've been married 9 years, and I've got 6, 4, and 2 my kids. So it's like we're very close, and we're both working with dads.
In the glory days, man. Well.
Yeah.
Glory days of parenting.
That's right. But
yeah.
Don, how about you kind of tell us a little bit? I know when we talked recently, you kind of told me, you had kind of been in lots of different areas, been running some different businesses and stuff. And so maybe kind of share with us your story, like how you decided to get into fitness or maybe like, why you're passionate about that now.
Sure. So I didn't start like coaching right away when I started. I went to college. Probably a generational thing. Like college was kind of the route per se. And I got a 4-year degree, was in HR of all things, business, but concentration in HR. Got my grad degree right afterwards, about a year and a half. Started working about 10 years ago. First job was in New York. And I took one of those early career rotation programs that kind of moved me around different areas. And kind of just my goal was really like, how do I just earn enough money to provide for the family? And that was my route for 10 years. So very corporate jobs. My first job wasn't it was for a sugar company, and which isn't for fitness now. It's kind of a weird background. It definitely informs some of the ways I see nutrition and food and that kind of stuff, and just a good experience. But so long story short, I found myself 5, 6 years into this career wanting some more entrepreneurial things, getting the itch. And once you have the itch, it's hard to get rid of it. And so started a bunch of different things. And at the time of my life, I had just gone through probably the worst season of my health. So 2020, really busy. I was spread thin. I had a job that I was responsible for 4 different locations in different states. And I was like 26, 27 with like this responsibility and like was just not taking care of my health and shortcutting sleep, overeating. I was probably 200 pounds plus. I'm 5'10". I'm not tall, 5'11". So it was like bulky, but the wrong kind of bulky. You know what I mean? And so I actually, what ended up happening, I had a day where I had a panic attack and just like the consequences of my decisions caught up with me. I had put off, I knew I needed change, but I put it off because I'm stubborn for like 6 to 8 months and it caught up with me. And so I needed to make a change. And so made some changes slowly, got my diet, eating, all that stuff, and just kind of went on this journey with fitness that I've always been interested, but I really dialed it in. I was like, I'm seeing all these changes. This is great. Probably lost 10, 20 pounds. Was in a better place. And so I started writing about some things on a blog, the Layman's Fitness. And it started with me just exploring how fitness intersected with faith as a Christian, and just was writing prolifically. That didn't go anywhere. Like it was just me writing for a few years. And then really fast forward to, 23, 24, we had a bunch of different side hustles, everything from like buying and selling sports cards and flipping those to selling stuff on Etsy to this little fitness thing. And our 3rd kid was here. I had a full-time job, 50 hours a week, plus the other stuff I was doing with the business. So it was just too much and just something had to give. And so I said, well, if I'm going to do something seriously, let's like give my full effort to it. And fitness ended up being the thing that I just felt combined my experience with coaching, because HR is multifaceted, but a lot of what HR does is working with high executive leaders and helping them think through problems. And that's essentially what coaching is. So I did that for 10 years. I was like, well, I can apply this to fitness, so let's try it. And then it's about 18 months of that. So I started that end of 23, beginning of 24, 8 months worth my job. And then I was able to do this full time in July, August of 24, so a year. So that's like the long-winded answer to how I got into this. So happy to talk about any of that.
Yeah. Another there was something there that you said, you mentioned. So you felt, you said you started gaining weight, you weren't feeling the best, but it took you like 6 to 8 months to finally start doing something about it. So tell us a little bit more about that. Like what was going on? Because I think, to be honest, I mean this with clients. It's like when you have these conversations and you're like, they're telling, they're not feeling well, they're not, they're not, maybe they're not sleeping well, their energy levels are low, and you ask them like, well, how long has this been going on? And they're like, since I was in my 20, and 20 years ago and stuff. And so it's like these, a week becomes a month becomes a year becomes a day, and so it's like very easy. So how did you go from, I'm not feeling well right now, I need to do something, to finally taking action?
Yeah, it's a good question. My story is probably similar to most. It didn't start. It started like years prior. So if you knew me in high school, college, you probably would have been like that. He's fit in shape. I was athletic, did sports, like triathlon in college, rock climbing team in college, like all different kinds of stuff. Once you start working, and you work a 9 to 5, it's really a 7 to 5 plus all the other stuff. So the amount of time you have to exercise it becomes very, very little. And when my first kid was born in 2018, I stopped exercising really for the first time in my life and was skinny. I was like 160. And so I started bulking and dirty bulking, which just means eating as much as I wanted when I wanted. And that pattern just didn't stop. So that was 2018, and that went into 2019, 2020. And then when you work for a sugar company, you have a little bit more license, I think, to eat sweets, because that does kind of pay the bills, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And so the inhibition's a little lower. And so it started to stack, and I started to feel it, but really I felt it in my energy, and I caffeinated myself throughout the day. Like 3 p.m. coffees was just what I did. And I started to feel it towards the end of the year. That's pretty normal. Like end of the year, people think about New Year's resolutions. My mindset was, I can solve this. I just don't need to right now.
Yeah.
Like, I know how to do it, but I'm just choosing not to, which I think is a trap I think we fall into. Because I think if you knew the right thing, you do it. But a lot of times we think we know what we need to do, and we actually don't, because we think we take on too much. And so I just was like, I just don't want to do this. And I'm just going to keep going because I feel like I can. And there was a day in May where I said, like I would describe it as a panic attack. I literally call off work, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything. Like, I just couldn't move. I was there, like, totally stunned. I didn't know what was going on. And I looked like heart racing, all the things. And it hit me like, my decisions have caught up with me. And it was an absolute low.
Yeah, I think that, unfortunately, I think a lot of people wait until something like that does happen, right? There's maybe a panic attack or a heart attack, or they watch a family member go through it, or they go to the doctor and they get a diagnosis that they didn't like, or something like that. And so it's like, how can we help people make that decision, but before it gets to that point? So if you like, so I had a friend of mine, Devin, was on this podcast, and he this was about two months ago, maybe longer than that. My timeline's a little fuzzy right now, but he struggled with alcohol for a long time. And he went through years of struggling with it and stuff. And one question I asked him, I said, what could someone have said to you to help you through it? And he said there was nothing. He said there was nothing that anybody could do because I had to make that decision. Now, obviously, that's, I say that's a different issue, but a lot of times, food is comfort. We don't like to think of food as an addiction. We don't like to think of our comfort as an addiction, but a lot of times the
Right.
similarities are there, right? And so
Right. That's true.
thinking back to that time period of your life, could anybody have said anything or done anything to help you kind of speed up the process?
Man, that's a really good question. Um, I think where my mindset at, I'm pretty stubborn as a person,
Yeah.
and I think at times very arrogant. I'm not proud of saying that. This is true
Mm-hmm.
at times. And so I think it would have taken a lot. I would have had someone who I really trusted who could look at me and say, I see the trajectory you're on. Do you want this? But that's just not anyone. You know, like a piece of content wouldn't have done that for me. An acquaintance would have done, someone from work. It would have been someone that I would have trusted. So I'm like, hey, Don, like, I see the path here. I wish I had that, honestly.
Yeah.
I really do. I didn't. So probably it would have to be someone that I looked at their life and been like, I want what you have. And I would have been willing to listen to that. And probably what they would have asked me is like, hey, are you do you like what you're doing now? And if you keep doing what you're doing, like, where do you see that happening? And is there anything you can do right now? I think you can change that. Just simple questions,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um, or I think this happens, and this is another way. Whenever you're in that zone, it's not just fitness. Like, it's not just your health. It impacts your relationships,
Yeah.
right? So if someone would have called, and I'm just being transparent, like, I started to see me being more agitated with my oldest daughter, who's a baby, with my wife. So someone had called me out on that. And that started to happen a little bit. That was some of the things that planted the seed. That a friend called me out for that. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'm probably like, it was anger specifically. And I was like, okay, that's someone I trusted. Okay, I'm starting to see that. I just didn't make the connection between that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is all, tied in together there. And I think you nailed it there. Is, you said you felt like maybe you're stubborn and arrogant and stuff, but I feel like maybe as dads, as like we have a little bit of that. We have a little bit of that.
Oh, totally.
We always have that chip on our shoulder. Like, it's not natural, and especially like, I mean, I feel like as maybe a society we're getting better where it's okay to ask for help and things like that, but like our dads didn't grow up like that. Our grandparents definitely didn't grow up like that, and so it's like I remember thinking like, so we bought a house like 4.5 years ago or something, and they were like, I knew nothing about owning a home or fixing things and things like that, and my dad just seemed to know everything. It's like you ask something,
Sure.
it's like, and I asked him, I was like, well, how'd you learn how to do this stuff? He just did it. He was just like,
Yeah.
and I was just like, it was just like, what do you mean you just did it? It's like you just, and like that's what I told recently I had a conversation with my wife, and I was like, that was I wanted two things when we bought a house. I didn't have a lot of things that I wanted on my list, but I wanted a neighborhood that had lots of street lights,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
I did not want a project house. We live in a
Mm.
neighborhood with very little street lights, and we have a project house, and so I didn't. So neither one of those is on there, but it's been very much a blessing because I've been able to learn tons of things that I maybe never even wanted to know. But it's like
Yeah.
learn all these things, but I can teach my kids that when they get older and stuff. But it is hard for me. It is hard for me to admit like I don't know. And that's something like I'm working on too. And I think,
Yeah.
I work like you work with parents, you work with dads, I work specifically with dads. And so I see this all the time. Like a lot of times we have clients that come to us where it's been years. This probably could have, it didn't have to take this long, right?
Mm-hmm.
But back to what you said though, you needed somebody in your life who, not just anybody. If I ran into you on the street 2 years ago and I saw, the way you were communicating with your kids or your wife or something, and I just called you out, you'd be like, "Who is this guy?"
This guy.
Right? So, yeah,
What do
who's
you
this
don't
guy
know
calling
me?
me out on social?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, who's this guy calling me out on social media? Why is this guy writing an email to me
Right.
right now? I don't
Right.
even know who he is. And I think as dads, that's one thing that we're not everybody, but a lot of people aren't good at having a community, having other dads, having people in their life who can speak truth to them, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think,
it's true.
I don't know. I'm assuming, you played some sports growing up and, were active and stuff. And I remember having a coach that would yell all the time. He would just
Yeah.
yell and yell and yell. But I love the guy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a yeller,
Oh
but
yeah.
I couldn't. I mean, I could think back to all coaches, and again, like, people are a little better nowadays, and not just
Sure.
doing all the different coaching styles and stuff. But I remember I had this coach. I to this day I speak so highly of it. But like, if I look at it, and I'm just like, why? Like, why did I love this guy so much? His form of communication was yelling. But
I had one of those too, man. He was I did martial arts in high school,
uh-huh.
and this guy, like it was Sensei, what we called him. It
Mm-hmm.
was his first name was like E. It was like Sensei E
Mm-hmm.
something, just one letter. And he was probably 5'2", 5'3". He would waddle around when he walked. He would sit on his chair with a fishing pole and a big hook on the end of his fishing pole. When we were doing forms and stuff, he would throw that like at our feet and yell at us like, "Don't look at the lure, don't look at the hook." And it's like 16, and I'm like, if I make a step that's wrong, my foot's like gonna get punctured.
Yeah.
And he'd yell at us the entire time. I loved that. Like, I'm here telling this with a smile on my face. Like, I'm thankful for the
Yeah.
lessons that taught. Um, it's just, I think it's just kind of coaching it. We all need this. We all need someone to help us get to a place that shakes us a little bit,
Yeah.
gets outside of what we're comfortable with, because that's always where breakthrough and change happens. It
Yeah.
never happens when you're comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
It's been an experience.
Yeah. And I'm guessing, for the coaches that I had that always yelled at me and stuff, and I'm guessing for you as well, the ones that were able to do that were because you knew they cared about
Yeah,
you, right? That
yeah,
if this guy, if your sensei was just somebody who was just, terrible, berating you all the time, not wanting the best for you, like, then yelling at you. I had another coach before who would yell at us all the time, and you could tell he did not care about you as a person. And so when
yeah,
he would say something, it was hard to take that feedback. But I can think of two coaches, or three actually, very specifically growing up, who that was their mode of communication, was just yelling. Because
yeah,
and for whatever reason, I was like, man, I love this guy, because we need somebody like that, right? And obviously, if they're your client, you have somebody come into your
yeah,
program, you can have that effect. But if you're not, specifically searching that out, then obviously, like, that's harder. And so I think that goes back, like, you were in New York, you're working, you're probably, you said, it's 8 to 5, but it's really 7, or 6 to 5,
With
and it's like,
commutes, it's like 6 to 5. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, it's so
yeah,
when
it's a long day.
not only do you have, like, when do you have time to be with your family, work out, and even just be with other dads, be around other
Yeah,
guys. And so if somebody was in your situation right now, when you were in New York working that job right there, what would you do to help them, with
hmm.
their fitness, to get to where they want to be?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, Kind of depends on their goals, but if I had like 20 pounds to lose, let's say, or 30 pounds to lose, and I was in that space, you had 10-hour days plus your commute, you're coming home, you have a young kid, kind of newly married, you're kind of in the 20s figuring it out, even in the 30s figuring it out space. Um, I think it's a few things. I think a lot of it's time management, honestly. I think that's the biggest thing to get down. And so you're probably pretty disciplined, I imagine, doing things at work. So it's how do you translate that over into the evening and the morning? So that's the first thing to think through is like, how do what's my energy highest? Like, what makes sense for me? All that stuff. That's the first thing. The second thing is like, do something you like. It doesn't need to be complicated.
Yeah.
Like, and this is like for my program, you don't need to go to the gym. You do it at home. You need like one kettlebell to get started, maybe three if you want to keep going. That's not a lot. And you need 20 to 30 minutes. Like, it's just, that might be kettlebells for you, it might be something else. But what is it you like to do? Do that 3 times a week, whatever that looks like. The third thing to do is try to automate your eating as much as possible up to dinner.
Yeah.
Because typically, if you're working 9 to 5, you already have some structure. You know when you need to leave in the morning, you know when your lunch is thereabouts. If you can just win during that time, dinner becomes easy and more flexible. And then the fourth thing is just move throughout the day. Like get up, take a break. I look back on the things I worried about in that time with those jobs. It's not as important as I thought it was. It's really not, because I can't even remember half the things I was worried about 10 years later. I really
Yeah.
can't. Like the emails I would worry about, the spread, like I know it feels important, but it's like in 10 years, you're going to forget half of those things. You're not going to forget your health.
Yeah.
You won't.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, there's like 5 things there I wanted to touch on. that was
Yeah.
really good. But no, the one you said, like, you know, just where's your energy the highest? I always have clients, for the most part, if they can, work out in the morning, because if you're traveling, you know, you're with a commute, you're gone from 7 a.m. to 5 o'clock at
Yeah.
night, and then you get home and you have dinner, and it's like the last thing you want to do is probably go work. You're probably exhausted, right? And so it's like,
Right.
can we get this done in the morning? Can you
That's
get
right.
it done
Yeah.
over lunch and things like that? And so the other thing I want to talk about was finding something you like. Like
Yeah.
I think that's like I don't have any clients right now doing the same exact program. Like
Cool.
it's set up like for them, right? Like obviously there's
Nice.
similarities. There's still like structure, you know, there's still, you know, like a template you build off of, right? Like it's like we still want to make sure, you know, we're like, you could swap out a dumbbell bench press for a bench press or a push up. You know, you're still working the same muscle and stuff. It's like, but it's like, if you love resistance bands, let's use resistance bands. Like if you love kettlebells, right? Let's use kettlebells, right? If you want to, I had a client. This was a number of years ago when I was training them in person. And when I was like a very young trainer, I used to always think like, you know, dumbbells are better than machines and stuff. They help you stabilize this. And it's like, there may be some truth to that, but I was like, bodybuilders, like some of the strongest men in the world, use machines. If they're good enough for them, they're good enough for me. And so it's like, and I had this client who, I mean, they would come and work out and they would get their workouts in and stuff. But we started using machines because that's what they like. Now all of a sudden they were working out like 3 days a week because they loved the routine on the machines upstairs, and they would just do like a circuit and stuff. And I was like, awesome,
pretty cool.
Let's use machines and stuff. And so it's like, let's figure out like what you like, you know. And that's the cool thing about like fitness is like, it doesn't, like, you and I train probably very differently and stuff. And it's like, you don't have, there's nothing I always say there's no exercise you have to do, right? If there's something you just absolutely hate, it's like, well, let's find something you like. It's much more important that you find maybe not the most optimal exercise and you do it consistently than doing something that is the best for you that you're just never going to do. And so I know you train with kettlebells and a lot of at-home workouts and stuff too. And correct me if I'm wrong.
That's true.
What happens if a client comes to you and they're like, you know, I need to lose about 50 pounds, but I also want to put on a ton of muscle right now. Like, where do you start with them?
Good question. So there's probably a few things that are going on in that circumstance that we probably need to like work through and prioritize with that person. And I think with weight loss, I think, okay, here's where I'd start. I think the biggest thing is, let's put together some kind of structure that you can at least appreciate that you might enjoy a little bit of with the exercise, right? So if that person's not exercising, it's probably a barrier for that person to think, okay, now I have to get a gym membership and I have to take 10, 15 minutes and I'm getting ready and I'm like all these things. So, okay, let's remove those barriers, and you can do it at home. Put it in your garage. You need one kettlebell. It'll take you 30 minutes and you're done. Does that sound okay? Okay, yeah, I can get on board with that. Like, it saves me time. So and then there's a way with kettlebells body weight, the way I think that just solves some of those problems, and it just reduces the friction at first. Once you get into it, it becomes very fun because you can like get strong, all the things. So I'd focus on that habit first. The second thing is probably nutrition. The biggest thing I think that's going to move the needle. The goal is 50 pounds. how I typically like to start if I'm like really diving in is like, let's do an audit. Like, what are you eating? Let's talk about it. Log it for a week. Let's look at it together. And I want you and I to both see what that looks like. And I know logging, it's not an accurate science, but it's good enough. It's good enough. It's good to get the picture of like what it is. And it's very exposing and it's very vulnerable. That's one of those things that breaks down that stubbornness of like, oh wow, I didn't realize how much I was taking. I didn't realize like what cereal does to you. I didn't realize like all these snacks how much that adds to it. So let's just look at it together and then let's zoom out and say, you want to go here. Here are the 3 changes maybe we can talk to make at first. So it's very like, okay, let's make a change here. Let's make a change here. Let's make a change here. Let's do that for 3 weeks. Just focus on that. We'll make progress as we go. And then the third thing is movement. So typically if you're about 50 pounds over where you want to be and you're working a job, you're probably moving 3,000 to 5,000 steps a day would be my guess. And that just means if you want to start moving more, let's take it in increments. So how can you add 1,000 steps several times throughout the day? That just means three walking breaks throughout the day. You're going to get close to 9. You will start losing weight quickly when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think I really like your approach there. I always think like the more simple we can make things, the better. Especially as you're starting out. It's like I figure out what you can stick to, and like the walking thing is so important, and it's something that just goes completely overlooked, right? You talked about like the average for like 3,000 to 5,000 steps a day or something. If you're working from home, that's way less. It's like
2 to 4. Yeah.
I had someone tell me the other day. Something. I think it's like when I first got a Fitbit or something like that. And one of my cousins, they were asking me like how many steps I got a day or something. He was like a day. He was like, I get like 2,500 steps a day tops. And he was like, he works from home and stuff. And I was like 20. And if you think about it, like I work from home, and so like I have to be like the walking breaks. I literally have to schedule my walks. I get one in the morning, I get one over lunch, I get one in the it's like I have to, because at home, like my house isn't very big. Walking back and forth to the bathroom doesn't give me a lot of steps throughout the day and stuff. And so it's like we have to be intentional. And I guess that's one of the benefits of like if you work in an office or something, that the walk from your car to your office is going to take some steps there. But it's like I think it's like, and I know you mentioned too, like going from like high school to college to your first job and stuff, all of a sudden like things just like that's where people pack on weight, right? They think like what I haven't, my metabolism's just slowing down, my body's not working the way. I was like, I don't know if anybody's ever done this, but I was like, I want to put a Fitbit or a tracker on like a high school soccer player who's walking around all day long at school. You're going to class all day, and then you're practicing soccer 5 days a week, at school. You have a game and stuff like that. And it was like, and then we wonder when we get to college, when we get older, I was like, oh, my metabolism slowed down. I was like, you're moving like an eighth of what you did, in the past and stuff. And so it's like, yes, your kids are probably going to be much more active than you are. And it's like, but we can still combat some of those things. Do you have with your clients? Is that something that you track? Is that are steps something?
Look at steps. Yeah, okay. We do. That's part of the training piece. And there's a few reasons for it. I mean, first, weight loss. That's probably the main problem people are looking to help solve. There's some minor problems people have that it can be solved though. I say minor, but significant problems people can have with not moving enough. So a lot of it's lower back pain. Yeah. So if you think about when you're sitting, you're bending your body in half and you're applying your torso weight, which is probably 100 pounds or more, on this little juncture right there where your hips are. And that's happening probably 6 hours a day. So that's a prolonged period of time where you're applying that level of pressure. The second thing, when you're sitting, you're flexing your hamstrings, and that's going to pull on your pelvis. You're kind of like the sides of your gluteus medius, that's going to be underactive. Your hip flexor is going to be overactive. That's a recipe for lower back pain. And a lot of that can be solved by just adding like 30 minutes of movement throughout the day, it's not going to completely absolve it, but it's going to help significantly. That's another thing too. Like, I'm getting older, it's back pain. That's part of it. Like, yes, you'll experience that. Um, a lot of it also is how much are you sitting during the day. And if you can just move a little bit more, some of that pain is going to go away. So that's another thing people see. Like, after working, like we work together, like they're not all their back pain goes away because there's other factors, but
Yeah.
it's more preventable than we think it is. And I felt that. I remember being like, because I worked, like 7 years, I worked a job with a commute, and then 3 years after with at home. So I didn't have a remote job until like well into the career. And I started getting more back pain. I was like, am I getting old? Like, I'm late 20s. What's going on here? And I was just sitting too much. The whole day is designed to sit.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it too, it's like when we are sitting or when we're working from home or we're, in the office or something, we like to have like the softest chair. We get super comfortable and stuff. And I was like, that's another. It's like our body just kind of melts into it. We're sitting in these
Yeah.
bad positions all day, and then we want to go and try and work out. We're like, oh, I can't lift this up. My back hurts.
Why is this
And it's like,
yeah.
yeah. So it's like sometimes it's just like even just getting like a harder chair or something that it's like, hey, like this is not a very comfortable chair. Oh, now you got to stand up more. Now you got to walk around. I was like, that's actually a good thing. It's like, it's just like,
Yeah.
there's all these little things that can add up over time.
I remember working with people that, I remember like 10 years ago, before standing desks maybe were as popular. I remember working with people who did that. People would bring Bosu balls into the office, and I'd be like, you guys are crazy. Like, what are you doing? And now I'm like, oh, there's a reason they're doing that. Like, they're in their mid 40s. They feel the pain. I think that's an issue. I think going back to earlier conversation, my pain wasn't great enough for me to want to make change. Once you start hitting late 30s, early 40s, you start feeling a little more pain, and you're willing to make some changes. And these people started to do that. I was looking at them being like, I don't understand why you're standing up throughout the day. That seems so lame. And here I am trying to do more of that, 10 years later. But anyway.
Now you said something interesting there. You said my pain wasn't great enough to make me do something about it, right?
Yeah.
What, I guess going back to your story here, because I think that's one thing, that's the problem I've always tried to solve. Like I like it's hard, like when a client signs up and they're like, I've been struggling with this for 20 years, and then they're wanting to solve it in the next 6 months. It's like it's probably not gonna. It'll get better. Like we can make it go better and stuff, but like this is accumulated for 20 years, right? So how, like, and I don't like, I mean, across social media, podcasting, like I am not a negative person, and so like I'm not going to be like, the world is ending and stuff like that. But maybe there's a part that maybe needs to kind of show more of that, because these things do, like, you are missing out on things. Your life is, you can't get this tight, like with your kids, if you're like so I don't know if I shared this with you, but in the last May I had hip surgery, and this past January I had surgery on my other hip, and so for the past 16 months or so, I have not been able to run around with my kids much at all. Yeah. And it has been incredibly frustrating because they're young. I want to play with them. I want to have fun. And it's like to zoom out and think, like, if I didn't, like, this lasts another, like, that's my motivation, right? If this lasts another, 3 years or 4, and it's like now all of a sudden my son is 10, and it's like all this stuff. It's like that's super frustrating for me to think about.
Sure.
And it's like and like I like to kind of see the bright side, like, well, at least I can do this, at least I can do that. But a lot of people are kind of the other way, right? They're like, or sorry, they're thinking that way. We're like, oh, I can still do this, I can still do that, not even realizing what they're missing out on because they haven't built that pain up. And I'm not saying just be negative, just think of all the pain that you're causing and stuff like this. But what would, like, how I guess you said there was a 6 to 8 month gap from the time, like, you realize I need to do something about this, I'm ready to do something, and actually taking action. And so what was the tipping point? Like, what got you, like, how, like, what I guess from the time where you knew, like, okay, I'm not feeling the way I am right now, to the time, like, obviously something happened, right? Like one day, like obviously it was an 8 month journey. It was probably, it could have been years leading up to that point, right? But there was obviously something that got the ball
Yeah.
rolling.
It's a good question, man. And I just think this is so relatable because like you don't know what you don't know. I think that's true. So you don't, a lot of times if you feel lethargic, you feel, your body's not responding the way you want. You don't, not sure it's normal,
Yeah,
right? Like, it's like, am I supposed to feel this way? I'm working, I have a busy job. Maybe that's just normal. Like,
yeah,
maybe this is just the way it's supposed to be. And maybe this is just a season of grind. This is where I just need to push through and show that I can do this.
yeah,
That was my thought. It was like, I don't know it's normal. I can push through and we'll just see if this works.
yeah,
Um, so what tipped it for me was me, I would describe it as a panic attack. So it was like me calling off of work,
yeah,
not able to go there. I was on the phone with my parents in the yard, hardly able to talk, heart racing, wondering what's wrong with me and thinking, how did I get to this point? Here I am, 26, 27, on the phone with my parents with a wife and a kid, like just at my low. Like so I say pain. The pain was I'm not able to be the person I want to be right now in every
yeah,
category of life. And I don't know what's wrong. So it was almost like when you're not able to fulfill your responsibilities. At least I wasn't able to be the husband I wanted to be, the dad I wanted to be. I wasn't going to work. I wasn't able to
yeah,
perform the way I wanted to. It just that was pain. Like that felt really bad.
yeah,
And so whenever you experience that, for me, it was like, okay, how do I prevent this from happening again?
mhm,
And I
yeah,
was like, okay, there's some changes I got to make. Maybe sleeping 5 hours a night and confident in myself is probably not a good idea,
yeah,
right? Maybe eating whatever I want to make myself feel better is probably not a good idea. Maybe, and this is the thing, this is a shift. Maybe there's something I'm doing that I need to change. Not what's happening out there, but maybe it's something that I need to start doing. Maybe I'm contributing to this problem.
mhm,
It takes a moment. That's the humility part. It's like, okay, maybe I'm
yeah,
contributing to this and it needs to change. That's what happened.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's a real like that's a realization that a lot of people have to come to is that like we talked about earlier, we may be a little bit stubborn, right? We're I can get this figured out. This is a season of my life right now that I just need to push through. 5 hour like we're dads. We got 3 young kids. It's like yeah, we gotta. Sometimes we're gonna sleep a little bit less and stuff, but it's like when we slow down a little bit and we realize what's going on, it's like do I need to be doing all of this right now? Like you said,
Right.
like you don't even remember what the emails were that you were stressed out about. It's just like there's all this stuff going on. And I think very similarly, I went through something like that where I took on too much at once and there were certain activities that I would do. And it took me few months to realize that this happened every time. But at the same time, each week, I would get massive migraines. I would do these certain activities. I would just get these migraines, and I would just be like, "Well, I'm just not sleeping much right now. I've just got a lot going on. I'm sitting in front of my computer and stuff.
Right.
I'm not outside much." And I was like, and I didn't think much of it, and then I realized I can't do all this.
Mm.
Something has to give, and it's very similar to you. My patience with my wife, with my kids. I was irritable. Like
Yeah.
I was just like wanting to just be by myself, go on walks and just like that. And I was like, I'm being a terrible example, for like it. And I think one thing that I always came back to is I believe like our kids have the opportunity to be like the best versions of ourselves. I think like we like if we allow them to be like we learn like obviously like I'm sure as you grew up there were certain things you watched your parents and like go through that you either really enjoyed or did not like, right? And so you were like, I'm going to take the good, and I'm going to learn from the bad, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like, and we pass that down to our kids, right? My hope is that like I can teach all those lessons to my kids so that
Mm.
they don't they can be better than they can obviously my grandkids will be even better, and it's like we just keep getting
Yeah.
better and better and
You
better.
want to see
But
generational progress. Yeah.
right. But if I don't do my part, I stop the flow there, right? Like it's not going to get better. And And so that to me, like I see like certain things like in my kids and stuff, and I was like, if my like you like if I watched my son, like for me, I'm like, it's like, I'm a growth mindset with everybody else, but for me, I'm just really hard on myself. And it's like I think that's common. I think that's common for a lot of
Sure.
people. But it's like if I watched my son not sleep, be stressed all the time,
Hmm.
take on multiple jobs and stuff, like what would you tell him? And I was like, whatever that answer is,
Good
that's what
question.
you got to
Yeah.
tell yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, and I think like you said there, like I think that's the point that we have to be able to get clients to be, that you have to come to on your own, is like what you said was, I was not showing up as the dad and the husband I wanted to be. And it's like,
Mhm.
but and that's tough. That's tough because like we make excuses, right? We make excuses for like, oh, this is a busy time of life. This is a busy time of
Yeah.
life right now. And so if someone's watching, they find you on Instagram, they find you on Facebook, or wherever they see your content, they read in your blog or something like that. What's one nudge you could give them right now before things get bad?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think it's embarrassing to ask for help. I think there's a sense of embarrassment and
Yeah.
shame. It's almost like I have failed. I can't do this, and I feel like now I'm having to get help in an area I don't think I need to have help with. I think that's an impulse I think people feel like with fitness specifically. It's literally like you just eat well and you move. Like how hard is that? And you sleep a little more and you like clean up. Like, do I need help with that? Here's what I'd say is I think it's the nudge I would give that person is, first of all, it's every breakthrough I think people have had. It looks like they do it by themselves. It's not. You're like, for instance, even if you were to have a breakthrough by yourself, which is yeah, like you're probably Googling it, you're probably researching it, probably talking to friends. So it's at some point like we're gonna get knowledge from other people. So the idea that like you have to be the one to figure it out, I think is just a fallacy. I think it's impossible. Like because we're always going to receive help from someone. It might not just be direct. The second nudge is like, I mean, personally, every quick breakthrough I've had has almost always been through someone else showing me, either through a mentor I've had in my life or a coach. I think about becoming a parent. There were some guys from church that I saw their kids, and I was like, "How are you doing that?" I don't know. We would meet with for coffee for weeks, and now they would just share. And I can tell you that put me so much further ahead because it's like, I don't know. I want to know what you're doing. And so it's like,
Yeah.
I think there is this sense of, the breakthrough that really is meaningful almost always happens with another person. That doesn't mean like a formal coaching relation. I'm just saying it'll behoove you to work with someone else to do it. And that could be people in your church, that could be your friends, that could be your spouse. But the idea that you
Yeah.
have to do it by yourself is just a fallacy. It never happens that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think we've touched on this already, but yeah, like just having being vulnerable with other men, I think is hard. Like it's hard. Depending on your example you grew up with, you
Yeah.
may never have seen your dad or the other men in your life be vulnerable. And so now it's like all of a sudden it's like if you want the best out of your relationships, if you want the best out of your fitness and your health, you got to find someone to be vulnerable with. And you're like, what in the world? It's like that's a huge change there. And it's like, and again, like you said, you don't have to hire somebody, right? But there are people. I always like to think like it always boggles me where it's like people, why do we have to continue to make the same mistakes other people do? Right?
Mhm.
Like we
Sure.
watch other people struggle, but there's something about experiencing it, right? And so can we how can we like, and the only way I think you touched on it there, the only way to close that gap is to be intimate, to have a close relationship with somebody who has gone through the struggles you're trying to avoid, right? And so and that goes back to asking for help, right? And it's like, again, it doesn't have to mean hiring a coach. It doesn't have to mean, working with somebody in a professional way, but there are people in your church, there are people at your work, there are people in your neighborhood, you have family members who would love to
Mhm.
help you, right? And I
Yeah.
think maybe that's something. I think that maybe that's something that though people who are maybe on that next level could do a better job at. Like if there's something that I struggled with, I could offer help through somebody else, right? I know that's something I like. I know that's something that one, asking for help, but two, like offering help, right? We
Yeah.
need to be better as men, as dads, offering help to young people too, and not thinking like, oh, they'll figure it out, they'll get through it and stuff too. And so
Yeah.
it's like, do you have, now obviously you said you had people, not obviously you have clients and stuff like that, and you said you have people that have helped you through things, but do you have relationships like that in your life where you're like, a mentor to somebody else?
Different seasons of life. So
Mm-hmm.
there were some younger guys in the church who were just getting married a few years ago. So we walked
Mm-hmm.
them all through them, like with their new spouses, just kind of through that a
Yeah.
little bit. Just it's mostly it's not, it wasn't this like regimented thing. It was, we were friends.
Yeah.
We're 8 years older than them. They were getting married, and we liked hanging out with each other.
Yeah.
And we just started hanging out and started talking about marriage and started sharing some things. We read some books together, things like that. Um, there's some guys, I'm just thankful. There's guys in our church, like the church I go to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it takes a long time, but with the right amount of effort and consistency, like we've built it's starting to become a really good place to grow together. And I think you made a comment earlier, a lot of guys don't have that. I think it's true. I just think the life that we live, typically 21st century, and I'm speaking broadly, it's very fragmented, and it can be very easy to be by yourself. And I think there's a lot of risks that carry, like just on like general health, fitness, but like general well-being. I don't think we're meant to do that, but it
Yeah.
takes a lot of effort, and even more so if you're a parent. You don't have a lot of discretionary time, so you have to make it happen. So I'm just thankful for that in my life. I think there's guys I'd look at and be like, I want to be like you in 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm thankful to have those examples.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I think, just not living in isolation is really, I mean, I think, everything improves, when we have people in our life who, we're going through life with them, right? We're not going through it alone. And even if you have, a wife, you have kids, if you don't have other, male relationships, it can be really tough.
Yeah.
Don, I really appreciate you, coming on today. I know we're coming up to the top of the hour here. Is there anything that you want to kind of leave us with, or any last takeaways?
Yeah, I think this is a great conversation. We covered a lot of grounds. Um, yeah, man, I think I really enjoyed the conversation, just about like kind of the low points. Like, and I think a lot of times we have to go through that. Like, I would love to avoid everyone having to go through that, but a lot of, like, I look back at that time, I'm actually thankful for it. I would love
Yeah.
everyone to avoid that. I just think if you know that you're trending and sliding toward that direction, like, you can do something about it. You 100% can. You don't have to wait for that. You can if you want to. It's going to be worse if you do, I think. Um, but I just think, I think we have an agency. Like, we have the ability to make changes, and that just might mean I need to get some people involved here. I need to ask
Yeah.
for help. I need to get a reins on this, and you can do it. That process is going to be challenging, but it's much better on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, once again, Don, I really thank you for being on the show today, and I would love to help, kind of spread your message. Where can people find you on social media, or join your email list or anything?
Yeah, probably the best place. I've got a website. So a company I run called Layman's Fitness, like layman's terms. So laymansfitness.com. You can join the newsletter. I send out just some things every week on Fridays. And I'm also on Instagram. So don.latorre.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, I'll get those links, and I will put those in the show notes. So I appreciate you coming on, man, and we'll have to have you on again sometime.
Thanks, Anthony. Enjoyed the call, man. It's great.
That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.